Today I'm going to show you how to use watercolors to paint a landscape showing the foreground, middle ground, and background. Today we're going to start with our paper and we're just going to focus on the ground. We're going to paint the sky later, and the reason why is that we don't want wet paint next to wet paint. So we're going to paint the ground first, let that dry, and then we'll go back and paint the sky. So for the ground, you have your horizon line, and then I usually draw another line below to show things that are closer to the viewer. So we've got a section for the middle ground or background, and then the foreground. If you want to have a third line, maybe you want mountains in the distance, you could add another line for the background, make it kind of random and natural looking. That way I can fit a lot on my landscape, and then I have some sky there still too. We'll be using the watercolors. And what I'm going to do is, depending on what colors I want, I'll probably stick with some greens. I'm going to drop some water in my palette on the different greens that I want. If I want to add some brown to make more of an earthy color, I can do that. Even adding a little bit of red will help dull down the green as well because they're complementary colors. Swish around the green a little bit. Whenever you switch colors, you always want to rinse your brush out in the water cup just by swishing it gently at the bottom of your cup, scraping the excess off on the edge, and then you can even dab it to make sure it's totally clean. I'm going to mix my lighter green. Those are probably the main colors I'll be using. What you'll do is you'll start with the part of your ground that's furthest away. So that would be up here. And what I'm going to do is use a pretty big brush, and I'm just going to lay water on this section, on that edge, the top edge of my ground. Then what I can do is take a little bit of my green. I want to dull it down a little bit, and I want to add more water to my green to water it down. I want it to look a little bit faded. I'm also going to dull it down with a tiny bit of red to make it a little bit more brownish. I will take that and I'm just going to dot it on the tops of my mountains, and then I can brush it down to show the top of my landscape. As you look at in the distance, things start to fade and look lighter and lighter. So my green up here is going to be the lightest. I'm going to darken it a little bit just because it's a little bit hard to see. So there is my first set of mountains at the top of my paper. My next layer, this is the background, the things furthest away. My next layer is going to be the middle ground, and that is things that are not super far away but also not super close. So I'm going to paint a little bit of a darker green in this layer by adding more green and more brown, or I'm going to add more red just to dull it down. And I do like to add a watercolor wash of water. You can see that when I paint wet next to wet, it does bleed together, which is okay. Notice that when I'm brushing left to right to show texture in the ground. And if you make a mistake, you can always take a paper towel and blot it out. using paper towel. This is going to be great when we paint the clouds, but you can also use it to show texture in the ground as well. My last layer is going to be the darkest layer of green, because as things get closer, we can see them more crisply and more clearly, and that has to do with color as well. So I'm going to mix less water but more of the paint. I'm going to scrub gently in the green palette to get more and add it to my green. Also going to add a little bit of red. Should clean my brush out in between to dull it down. I want to make this pretty dark now. Oops. You can see I made a mistake there. I can just blot it out with the paper towel. That works. You can see that this had time to dry, this color right here, because it doesn't bleed as much. There's a crisp edge, and that's a good thing. So I'm going to paint my darkest green towards the bottom. Make sure your messy mat is covering and is overlapping so you don't get paint on the table. And add a little brown in there. Make it more earthy. Make sure you paint all the edges and brush gently. The more you scrub and press the bristles into the paper will start to rip, so you want to be gentle with that, but make sure you get the edges painted. And you can go back over and add some more texture if you want to. But the main thing to remember is when you're painting your landscape, you want to have the lightest green or the lightest color in the background, a little bit darker in the middle ground, and then the darkest and most vibrant on the foreground. And I didn't even add some of my lime green or my yellow green. I could add that if I wanted to add some extra colors. Just brush gently, hold your brush like a pencil, and you can add a lot of fun layers and designs in your landscape.